Last night, the world finally saw at least part of one of Donald Trump's tax returns when MSNBC's Rachel Maddow revealed details on her nightly show.
What I have here is a copy of Donald Trump's tax returns. We have his federal tax return for 1 year for 2005.
Actually, 2 pages. Her scoop came with much fanfare because it's something Trump said he wasn't going to do, despite the precedent set by every other presidential candidate in modern history. During the campaign, Trump said he couldn't release his returns because he was being audited. His tax returns led to some of the nastiest exchanges of the campaign.
You haven't paid any federal income tax for a lot of years. And the other thing I think is important.
It would be squandered, too. I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
Despite Maddow's dramatic tease, the portion of this return, as I said, she only had 2 pages, didn't reveal a bombshell. Showed he paid about $38 million in taxes on $150 million of income for a rate of just under 25%. Documents came to light after being sent anonymously to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David Cay Johnston. He shared his own theory about why he received them and who might have sent them.
I think the reason they probably sent it to me is because I've written so much about negative incomes and how they're used by wealthy people not to pay taxes, and the alternative minimum tax.
Do you think it's possible that it was sent to you by the president?
Yes. Donald has a long history of leaking things about himself and doing it directly and indirectly.
Trump took to Twitter in response. Does anyone really believe that a reporter who no one ever heard of went to his mailbox and found my tax returns? Fake news. Still, the timing of this release and the fact the White House is ready with a response and quickly released this tax return on its own is fueling theories that Trump was trying to divert attention from the troubled GOP health care plan he's endorsed or possible inquiries into his wiretapping allegations against Barack Obama. Joining me are Lila Alphonse. She's managing editor for U.S. News and World Report, and I see you, Lila. Frank Phillips, State House Bureau Chief for the Boston Globe. Hey there, Frank. So is this not, with all due respect to Johnston and Rachel Maddow, is this not much ado about not much?
Well, it's interesting, but it obviously isn't what we were looking for in terms of tax returns. But I think it's more fun to think about that Donald Trump was trying to get this out for various reasons. I mean, it was obviously him. It said client copy. Right. I mean, a burglar could have left a calling card, or when he left. It was so obvious that this was good news. He paid taxes. But what we really have to see is the rest of the form, which is going to show where he's getting his income from. And those are the things that we want to see.
Is there anything that's bad news in this for him?
Yes, actually.
What is that?
It gave us a clue into his thinking behind his proposed tax policy and how they would affect him.
You mean getting rid of the so-called alternative minimum tax?
Exactly. That would have lowered his tax rate way, 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 way down. And I think that's an interesting insight. But the other thing that's interesting in it is it really undercuts the whole message from the left about how he hasn't paid taxes in 18 years. So this has been more good for him than it has been bad.
Well, that leads me to say, what I never, my assumption, and I bet you it's yours too, and maybe even yours, I've known him longer, is if someone doesn't disclose something they can, you are free to assume the worst. I assume the reason we didn't see the Goldman Sachs speeches till late till WikiLeaks was because she said something horrible. I love you, Goldman Sachs. There was nothing there. Why did Donald Trump, when he's being accused of paying no taxes by Hillary Clinton and others, why didn't he release these 2 pages then? Why didn't he say, you have no idea what you're talking about? Here's 38 million.
In the middle of a campaign, you can't release just 2 pages.
Why couldn't he leak them during the campaign? To you.
Well, he could have leaked them, but it would have been so obvious it was him.
Just like this.
It would have I think it would have created a fire that he didn't need at that point.
What people wanted his more recent tax returns. This is 10 years old. And they didn't really care whether he paid taxes 10 years ago. They want to know his business connections. They want to know where his income's coming from. They want to know if he's as rich now as he says he is.
But I know 75% of people in the most recent poll I saw, including a lot of Republicans and Trump supporters, say, I want the tax returns. But don't you think that now that Donald Trump or his surrogates are able to say, remember when all those Democrats said I paid no taxes for 10 years? $38 million is probably more than everybody who ran against me made in those past 10 years. Doesn't that mute the criticism about, with the public, about not disclosing tax information?
That is a coup for Trump to put those out. It was. It took the wind out of a lot of sails there because that was the accusation. That was my assumption, that this would show that he had not paid any taxes. But no, he paid at least 25%. We don't know, again, you know, what was that from, and where were the origins of his income? That's the important matter here.
This is the something shiny. This is the something everyone is supposed to talk about. It gives him another chance to talk about how the mainstream media is fake news. Even though he went and verified preemptively all the numbers in it, it's still fake because it's not something he wants to agree with. But it's the something shiny. I think the theory that maybe this is to distract us from the healthcare plan or the Russia investigation or the wiretapping claims or the Kushner
$400 million
exactly.
deal with
There
China.
are lots of things to distract people
One last
from.
thing, though. You seem to intimate something I criticized David K. Johnson for, and so maybe I'll criticize you, too. Sure. Johnson is on TV last night, beyond calling him Donald, which offends me, actually. He's President of the United States, but that's a whole other thing. He says, you know, if were it not for the alternative minimum tax, he would have paid 3%. Well, the alternative minimum tax is the law, and he complied with the law, and he paid 24%.
Right. No. The thing about the alt-min, which is interesting to me, is that the president has proposed eliminating it, which would have a direct positive impact for him and for people
Going
like
forward.
him. So just that insight is what's interesting. He complied with the law. I mean, I don't try to pay more taxes than I have to. I don't know anyone who does. And that's a valid argument.
For those who don't know, alternative minimum tax is a thing created by Congress for wealthy people who get reduce their tax liability with tons of deductions. Even if you do that, this is added on. Having said that, if it was a diversionary thing, I would argue one of the things that you mentioned that maybe it was trying to divert people's attention from was a bipartisan announcement this morning about whether or not leaders of the Intelligence Committee in the House believe there was wiretapping. Here's the Republican chair, Nunes, and what he had to say, at least so far. Here he is.
We don't have any evidence that took place, and in fact, I don't believe, just in the last week of time, the people we've talked to, I don't think there was an actual tap of Trump Tower.
Okay, so the Republican, not just Adam Schiff, the Democrat, the Republican says, I don't think there was a tap. James Comey is going to testify publicly, head of the FBI on Monday, probably say what was leaked to the New York Times. I asked the Department of Justice to say this is total BS. The former head of intelligence, James Clapper, who does have a credibility problem, we know that, is probably going to say, I didn't know anything about any warrant with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. What does Donald Trump do Monday night if this is where he ends up? Everybody says there's no there there when you're accusing the prior president of a crime.
He blows it off.
And no one cares?
No one cares. His base doesn't care. If you go to the websites, you even go to Fox News. It's not a big issue out there. It's a big issue here in Boston and New England and on the coasts, but it's in Washington, but it's not a big issue with the
You don't think real voters care at all?
No, and not at this point. I think it could get to that point where if there are other issues that are involved, really roiling the hinterland and where he gets his base, he could have trouble. But now all he has to do is blow it off. This is a brave new Orwellian world, if I can use those two phrases together.
Well, speaking of Orwellian, I think Sean Spicer was Orwellian the other day. Here's the press secretary trying to explain. Well, he wasn't really wiretapped. Here's Spicer.
The president used the word wiretap in quotes to mean broadly surveillance and other activities.
I try to be respectful. I really do. That's like an SNL routine.
That's
like he's Melissa McCarthy. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I was waiting for the podium to keep moving.
He did joke about that the other day. Don't make me move this podium.
Do you buy this, though, that if it's one thing to be tweeting out something that maybe, let's be kind, is exaggerated. When you're accusing your predecessor, the President of the United States, of being essentially a criminal.
His base loves it. They want to believe it.
It's a trial balloon. It's
go
what
to the
will people
websites.
take?
They say it's true.
Okay, so let me ask you the same question I ended last night with. Sure. So, assuming it's proven not to be true, that he wasn't wiretapped, and next week he says, we have evidence North Korea and missiles could attack Washington, D.C., so we're going to drop a bomb on North Korea. Do people believe him, or do they not believe him?
Well, that is obviously the problem here when you're over at the Kennedy Institute for Politics is, going to be a real problem. You go back to his base, and, they're going to believe him, and that's what he's relying on. For now. I mean, he's only, 100 and some odd days.
No, he's not even 60 days.
60.
Whatever. Seems like years, yes.
He's only 60 days into his presidency. And things can fall apart, and he's not going to be able to lie forever, and I think it will catch up to him when it goes off.
What a line! He's not the other. Quickly,
I
what's your
think the
sense?
question is whether the accusations that are not grounded in truth or fact end up becoming a national security issue. Because if you do end up making a baseless accusation against a foreign power and use that as an excuse to attack, that concerns the whole country.
And it might lose your allies too.
The problem is it blows up the world.
Well,
that's a good point.
Exactly.
It doesn't.
Lila,
Exactly.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Frank Phillips, pleasure.
Oh.
I know what you mean.